The author of The Founder's Speech to a Nation in Crisis, Stephen Rabb. Thanks so much for joining us.
Andrew, how are you?
Okay, you know, I never thought, well, I shouldn't say that. So James Bond and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory are now getting reimagined by the woke left.
Yes, this is correct. If you want to know what rock bottom looks like, if you're wondering what you should not raise your child to be, it is a sensitivity editor for a DEI organization in which all you do is you go into any of the classic books and you edit them for sensitivity. You say, this is not a modern language. This is not how they speak today. So as you can imagine, Andrew, this is just the beginning. If that's your standard, that you are essentially focused on anything that is not our modern language and that might potentially offend, then that opens up everything. Shakespeare, look out. He's going to be next.
I was going to say, isn't that the point of reading the classics or reading the works of writers who are long ago to understand the building blocks of literature and society and communications? I mean, when I read, let's say, Brave New World, I'm well aware of what I'm reading is, you know, the notes started back in the 1920s, and boy, that book's a real, it is a page turner. But isn't that the point of reading Mark Twain or, as you said, Shakespeare? I mean, isn't that the very essence of why you read these things in the first place, so they don't sound like they were written today?
Well, that's because you and I believe in the wisdom tradition. We actually believe that we stand on the shoulders of history, that we have much to learn from those who came before us, and that together as human beings, we are getting better, that as we understand wisdom more and more as humanity, we are improving together. That's not how they see the world. They see nothing before them as worth learning. They see that they're the perfecters of humanity, and that they don't respect history whatsoever. History is in their way, so they have to rewrite it. Whether or not that's the Constitution, whether or not that's the Founding Fathers, their aim is to destroy anything that is wise. They regularly say it is a living document, the Constitution, which means they edit the Constitution to match their current values and mores. They edit the Bible to match their current values, mores. Shakespeare, everything is up for editing to be aligned with leftism. It is a woke cult in which there is no end. There is no limiting principle.
And, you know, aren't most people just going to go out and acquire original copies? Or, I mean, you know, I could think the book I want my children to read eventually, and it's really one of my favorite books of all time, is Watership Down, which was made into an animation movie in the late 70s. But I could see that being the kind of book that they would just tear through because, you know, it's an indictment on, well, Richard Summers says it's not, but if you read the book, it's clearly an indictment on authoritarian government.
Well, I mean, James Bond. I mean, if you go into James Bond, look at all that toxic masculinity, right? Look at all the manliness in James Bond. Well, we can't put up with that anymore. That has to be edited out.
Let me just interrupt you. Let's just say this. My wife is the biggest my mother was such a huge James Bond fan that she would openly say she married my dad because she thought he looked like Sean Connery, a young Sean Connery. My wife is the biggest Daniel Craig fan you will ever meet. She loves Pierce Brosnan. Her celebrity crush is Daniel Craig. I hate to admit that on television, but when she saw this, she's like, they're ruining my favorite franchise. And she's saying this as a woman. She's like, hey, women watch James Bond is the character that all men want to be and all women want to be with.
Well, that's exactly right. And I mean, there's from every one of those, there's things we can learn and there's things we can understand, and it's context and it's history and it's understanding from whence we came as a people. That there's wisdom, that our human nature is fixed and permanent. 2,000 years ago, Jesus understood it. 200 years ago, the Founding Fathers understood it. And so when they speak and resonate, and it touches our hearts today, and they say things that are true and real, we say, wow, that still resonates with me right now. So if you believe in wisdom, and if you believe that human nature is fixed, then you believe that we don't have the ability to go back and revise all of history. We certainly don't have the ability to change human nature, and we ought to be more humble. And this is what they lack. They lack any sense of humility, a sense of context and propriety when looking at history.
Do I even want to know what they're taking out of Ronald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? Is it the Oompa Loompas? Or are they getting? Are they going to be no longer height challenged individuals?
Do you remember that Augustus got sucked up the tube?
Augustus Gloop?
Yes, exactly right. And he almost didn't make it up because he was too what? He was too fat. And
body diversity. Body diversity. Body diversity.
So that word has been struck because we can't call someone fat. That would be mean.
That's the Oompa Loompa song.
It's it, right? Exactly. So this is it. They are changed some of the very best scenes of Charlie and the Chocolate.
What's going to happen to Veruca Salt?
They're all going to get. They're all before they're said and done. Because understand, this is just this generation of sensitivity editors. I mean, we're just getting started, right? The sensitivity editors are there going to be mountains of them. They're going to go not only into the works of history, but the works that they've already edited.
But I will sometimes argue. I'm going to run out of time, and I'll make this point. I used to argue in high school and college. I didn't understand why we decided that this is the book that everyone has to read to graduate high school, like Lord of the Flies or something, right? I always thought that that there should be a more free process to what we read. And call me crazy hippie on that one. But I don't know why those things were selected for us. But the point of reading the book was to absorb the talent of the author. And you know that famous scene in Back to School when Sally Kellerman's explaining this to oh my God, Rodney Dangerfield, that how do you teach literature if you've re-edited it? How do you teach the good, the bad, what may be the ugly if you're literally taking it out of the text?
Well, that's just it. And if you don't believe in the good and evil, that's the problem. You and I believe that there is good and evil. And so when we watch those, we learn about human nature, about what behavior is beneficial and positive and what is negative. But for them, they just destroy. They don't see good and evil. They just destroy everything in their way.
I'll get smarmy. Maybe they'll come for Somerset Moms, The Razor's Edge, because, we don't want to get into ableism or anything. All right, I got to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew.